Muted.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jack Palmer, a Project Director at TU-Automotive, and welcome to this webinar on how to take the lead with fleet data. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll be tackling three main points that all relate to how data can be used by different ecosystem stakeholders to better manage the total operating costs of running a fleet. We shall explore what the trend towards embedded connectivity means for OEMs and service providers as data becomes synced to the industrial IoT and cloud. We'll also identify the data sets that can present operational benefits to the OEM, service provider, and the fleet as a group and individually to create a beneficial relationship between all three parties. And finally, we'll assess the impact of over-the-air updates in optimizing operating costs by reducing maintenance and repair time to keep the driver on the road for longer. Discussing this topic with me this morning are three industry experts. We have Drew Harbach, Engineering Group Lead, Telematics and Displays at PACCAR. We also have Wes Mays, Director of Product Innovation at Omnitrax, and we have Kelly Frey, Vice President of Product Marketing at Telogis. Before I hand over to our first presenter, I'd like to invite our audience to send in any questions that they have and that they would like to put to the panelists. You can do this by using the GoToWebinar functionalities that you'll find in the application. Also, I'd like to remind our audience that the recording of the webinar will be available in the next few days, so that will be sent directly to your inbox. I'm now going to hand over to Drew for our first presentation. Thank you, Drew.
All right. Thank you, Jack. My name is Drew Harbach, and I represent the OEM Perspective from Peterbilt Motors, as a division of PACCAR. I'm going to talk about taking the lead with fleet data from the OEM perspective. Obviously, there are three stakeholders, as mentioned here, and actually represented here on the panel. I represent the OEM, the TSP, the Telematics Service Provider, and of course the fleet customer. And all three stakeholders need to work together to monetize and also to take advantage of the fleet data. There are really two primary goals related to the data, the safety, savings, and beyond. Safety in terms of maintenance, savings in terms of route guidance and use of the data, and then beyond, emerging technologies such as ADAS is leveraging a lot of this data. And the ultimate goal for all three of these stakeholders is to really reduce the total cost of ownership and operation of the fleet customer. And so all three of these stakeholders need to work together to leverage that data to achieve that particular goal. Kind of looking back in terms of history, as these entities work together, they kind of worked in silos, if you will. From a historical perspective, the hardware for a lot of these fleet telematics services was provided in the aftermarket. They were involved displays, antennas, ECUs, modems. The OEM would get involved from doing simply a pre-wire, which is simply a power and J1939 connection. There was a lot of redundancy between what the OEM provided for other applications as well as these fleet telematics services. And a lot of times from a robustness standpoint, when we had issues in the field, there was a lot of question whether it was the OEM manufacturing issue or was it an install from the upfitter from the fleet telematics provider. So historically, we operated in silos and more of an add-on aftermarket for these fleet telematics services. Moving forward, the hardware really needs to be installed at the OEM. As an OEM, we are the expert in integration, and so we need to integrate the antennas, the ECUs, the displays at the OEM factory, whereas the TSP is expert in the fleet telematics services. So they provide the services for hours of service, fuel tax reporting, breadcrumbing, things of that nature. And then with this, the redundancy is reduced. So we have one antenna, we have one display, one gateway, and it's all installed at the factory. So it reduces the challenges and ambiguity when we have issues in the field related to these services. So overall, more robust design because the hardware is installed at the factory, and then the services are provided by the telematics service providers. In terms of data sharing, data is really the new currency. All of us as stakeholders have a different slice of that currency. and have different needs, but ultimately trying to reduce that total cost of ownership to the end customer. And so some of those areas that we leverage diagnostics and prognostics, basically using that data from the truck to understand what is going wrong or what could be going wrong in the future. So understanding the health of that truck and that asset in the field. Also from a fleet management perspective, there's needs to, if you will, monitor drivers, driver scoring, and how is drivers doing in terms of fuel economy and driving safely. And so embedding these types of technologies and leveraging data, fleet managers can understand where drivers need to improve, where they're doing well. And on the flip side, they also need to monitor the vehicle and how is the vehicle doing. So it's a combination between both the driver and vehicle, and how are they driving the vehicle and using that data to understand where optimization can occur. And then emerging Internet of Things, crowdsourcing, different nodes, if you will, from V2X and V2V, traffic, optimized route guidance, and load sharing, all can be sources of data that are coming in to the vehicle. And so this is the data sharing, the new currency, and all of us have our different needs of leveraging that, but again, focusing on keeping the fleet manager and the fleet customer driving in the most efficient way and the most cost-effective way, leveraging that data in that way. And then finally, I'll talk briefly about over-the-air expediency, being able to adapt quickly. There's more and more content coming onto our commercial vehicles and trucks in terms of engines and ECUs, more software, and the engine updates can be through engine parameters, complete software updates. And what's the benefit of over-the-air update to the end customer? Obviously fixes, software patches, new features faster, and the growing concern regarding cybersecurity. And as a countermeasure, we need to be able to react quickly and effectively to push updates over the air. And this growing truck content, trucks are no longer mechanical in nature. They are really a floating driving vehicle of different nodes and different ECUs. And driving that is how can we improve fuel economy, and there's regulations from emissions. And so the need to react quickly to these ever-growing needs. And then the government mandate for electronic logging devices is coming at the end of 2017, so the need to update as the laws change, and then fleet management service apps that need to be updated over the air. Looking out into the future, there's growing needs for the ADAS features such as lane keeping and adaptive cruise control, and all these sensors are being placed on these vehicles, and there's more and more need of sensor fusion. As another sensor is added, not just sensor fusion, I would like to call it sensor fusion and also data fusion. And so the need to update, to leverage these sensors to unlock more features. And so over-the-air update isn't just a preventative measure, it's also enabling future features that we don't even know yet. So that's the expediency for using over-the-air update. So kind of as a summary, all three stakeholders have an interest in leveraging data, whether it's the OEM, whether it's the telematics service provider, or whether it's the fleet manager. So appreciate your attendance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Drew. I like how you've described data as the new currency. I like that term, and thank you for guiding us through the historical and emerging trends that we see in this industry. So we've got off to a very good start there. I'd now like to welcome Wes Mays, Director of Product Innovation at Omnitrax, to give this presentation.
Thanks, Jack. As Jack just said, my name is Wes Mays, and I'm Director of Product Innovation for Omnitrax. Prior to this position, I was an engineering manager for a major truck manufacturer for 13 years. So I've seen a little bit of this as it emerges in the industry. Omnitrax has been in the telematics business, the data business that is, since 1988. We are a global company with presence in over 70 countries. We're headquartered here in Dallas, Texas, having over 900 employees with 11 locations. We currently have over 1,500,000 telematics units on the air. So we do have a little bit of experience in handling data. As I'd mentioned, we've been in the telematics business for 28 years. Drew talked about the importance to the OEM, the fleet manager, and their customer of the importance of over-the-air updates. This extends even further when you start looking at future models of agile software development processes. And we just see this as the beginning. In 2003, there were about 500 million eye-connected devices in the world, with a population in the world of 6.3 billion people. To give you an example, 15 years ago, if you were in a parking lot, the commercial vehicle, the truck, was probably the only connected vehicle. Today, our world population has grown to about 7.5 billion people, and we have 5 billion cell phones alone, with the total number of connected devices in the 15 to 17 billion range. Many elementary school children now carry their own cell phone. But before the Internet of Things and before the information superhighway, there was the interstate of things. This is going to continue to grow exponentially, and some estimates place the number of connected devices by the year 2020 to be as high as 40 million. So how does data apply to the commercial vehicle? Commercial vehicles are a bit different than our passenger cars. Yes, we both drive them from place to place, but a passenger car takes us, the driver, where we want to go. A commercial vehicle is an operating business entity. It's a self-contained business unit. It's a part of a larger organization. It's a money-making machine, and without profit, there's not a reason to have it on the road. So Drew described how OTA can benefit a commercial vehicle. He talked about safety and savings, and we've identified a third element of that tripod, and that's service. So let's take a look at where that data is doing for the three components of a commercial vehicle. I'm going to focus on the service as the third component. You may have heard about the smart roads and smart cities that are evolving. The sequencing of traffic lights and lights and signals is the first step. What if those lights and signals can now transform the traffic and let them know when a light ahead of them is going to change? The opportunity for accidents will be minimized, and more important for a commercial vehicle, its fuel economy will be improved. A single 18-wheeler can burn over half a gallon of fuel just accelerating from standing still to 60 miles an hour. This can lead to a significant increase in efficiency. From a traffic flow, that enables more vehicles on our existing roadways to the actual operating cost of a CV, of a commercial vehicle. And this is all enabled through the flow of data. You may have heard about the dedicated short-range communication system providing instantaneous links between vehicles. This isn't done with voice, this is done with data. The DSRC system was allocated by the FCC to enable and enhance highway safety. If you think about safety critical events like emergency braking or automatic systems must be able to respond in fractions of a second to prevent that collision. Likewise, steering control and lane control cannot accept a latency that's using a back office. This is all done with real-time data. We also talked a little bit about the overall operating costs and the cost of ownership to a commercial vehicle. With fuel accounting for approximately 1/3 the cost of operating the vehicle, any change in fuel cost or consumption directly affects the bottom line of the vehicle. The driver also constitutes about 1/3 of the operation costs of the vehicle. As we can influence fuel consumption by improving routing and navigation, we can also improve the efficiency of the operation of the vehicle through planned maintenance, equipment monitoring, and even lowering taxes through lower tax rates. As you can see from the, and I apologize, my computer is jumping ahead of me, so I apologize for that. As you can see from the previous slides, data will, think I'm going to have to keep toggling back and forth. I apologize for that. As you can see from the previous slides, data will allow safer and more efficient operation for fleets. So the same thing applies for service. As we take a look at fleet utilization of data, it's going to allow a fleet to be able to provide the driver with the information that they need to do their job better. That means that they'll be able to provide a better level of customization of routing, delivery, and scheduling with the ability to take the decision in their vehicle and provide better customer service. I really apologize for the screen. It seems to be on a time schedule there. So I'm going to shift gears a bit since the previous slide was not working too well and talk about where we as an industry are going. Today's commercial vehicles come equipped with very advanced features shown here. The amount of data that a single vehicle provides can be very mind-numbing. Just for fun, I calculated very conservatively how much data a commercial vehicle can generate in a 10-hour day. This is assuming that the J1939 is only loaded at a 40% capacity and is operating at a 10-hour workday. That came out to a whopping 450 megabytes per day per vehicle. But that's not really the end, since today's commercial vehicles can come equipped with very advanced features shown here. Our challenge as service providers to the OEMs and to the fleets is to be able to figure out what data is actually important, since most of the data coming over the 1939 is going to be redundant. Being able to collect that data, analyze it, and provide relevant information to the fleet and to the OEM is going to be our challenge as we move forward in the future. Jack Roberts of Overdrive magazine refers to the change that we're seeing as a transformational change. And he says that we're going to be taking the industry to a whole new level. We've been supplying data products for 28 years and are ready for tomorrow. And according to Jack, we're going to see the industry change more in the next 10 years than it has in the past 50. We believe that's absolutely true, and we're ready to provide service to the industry. With that, I'll turn it back over. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wes. I think that's a very telling quote from Jack Roberts there, and the fact that there's going to be a huge change that's not really been seen on this kind of scale before in this industry. So I'd now like to turn it over to our final presenter, Kelly Frey, Vice President of Product Marketing at Telogis. I'd like to turn it over to you, Kelly, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Jack. And thank you, Drew and Wes. Great job providing the context for what we've got out in front of us and the opportunity. And as Drew said, you know, there's the OEM, there's the end customer, there's the telematics service provider, there's the dealers, of course, there's a larger ecosystem of the customers at the end of all of this that are getting the goods and services delivered as well. So quite an exciting time. So what I wanted to do is just spend a couple of minutes talking a little bit about some of these trends that we're seeing in terms of you know, kind of mega trends. So Wes did a good job talking about the Internet of Things, you know, this kind of hyper connectivity of vehicles and people and connected cities, et cetera, that are allowing us to leverage the power of the connected assets and intelligent machines. We're obviously on a march towards autonomous trucks. We're not quite there yet. It's going to be a little bit of time. But between now and then, we are certainly going to be able to take advantage of smart cities. We're going to be able to use ADAS systems to assist the driver, help them have a safer day, etc. But all of this connectivity creates a tremendous amount of data, and that data can be overwhelming to a typical operator. So what we've got to do as telematics service providers is help make sense of that, turn that data into information that can be actionable. And the way that we do that is with advanced analytics and benchmarking, so that fleet providers can know how they're doing versus their peers that look very similar to them. And we try and achieve that all with one cloud-based platform that allows us to do a number of different things. We've heard of the interstate of things that Wes talked about. I hadn't heard that term before. I've heard of Internet of Things, and Cisco, the networking company, extends that to the Internet of Everything. Very much what we talk about at Tellegis and Verizon is the optimization of things. It's one thing to connect everything, but to be able to turn that connection into value, you have to be able to optimize where's the fleet located, what are the routes that we're running, what are the schedules. And it's not just the on-road vehicles, it's the on-road assets that are attached to the tractors, it's the off-road vehicles and equipment that are out there, but it's also the worker and the work that they're doing. And that's one of the points I wanted to make today for everybody, is that the truck ultimately becomes this amazing mobile network on wheels, and we have the ability to do great stuff. We can check the engine and see how it's going with diagnostic information. We can observe the driver's behavior, how they're driving that vehicle. We can use cameras mounted around the tractor and the trailers and the assets to know exactly how that vehicle is being driven, what sort of what's going on around that vehicle, etc. And we can essentially make that vehicle the hub. It becomes the 4G hotspot or the 5G hotspot itself. That's a big part of investment that Tellegis has been making over the last couple of years. And now that we've merged with Verizon and ultimately are the network, we can even increase the amount of capability that we have going to that vehicle so we can create more value. And as I said, it's not just stopping at the on-road vehicle. I think it's very critical to understand, as Wes said, the only reason you put a vehicle on the road is to generate profit. And very often that vehicle, that on-road vehicle, is interacting with off-road vehicles and off-road equipment. So at Tellegis, we've been a leader in terms of with built-in telematics solutions with a number of different OEM manufacturers that you can see here, on-road as well as off-road. Using AEMP, we can connect to the Caterpillar equipment, Komatsu, John Deere, etc., to give that full view of a company's entire mobile operation. So when we think about this, it's the vehicle and the assets, it's the driver, and it's the work that they're doing. And connecting and optimizing everything mobile, everything outside the four walls, gives us an opportunity to automate everything. This is an example of one of our OEM partners that has been a leader in terms of standard fitting telematics. So not only does the vehicle allow us to decrease, the telematics on the vehicle allow us to maximize uptime and improve total cost of ownership, we extend the value proposition beyond decreasing costs and improving safety and reducing idle and fuel consumption, etc., to actually impacting the worker productivity, helping reduce overtime, boost productivity and efficiency. So it's very important, I think, for everybody to realize that the connected vehicle has to provide a very good in-cab experience. It has to provide information about how the vehicle is operating, but we can also extend that experience outside the vehicle. When the worker is out and the driver is outside the vehicle performing work with perhaps a mobile device, we need to be able to keep that mobile device connected to the truck. We want to provide one common experience for that driver and that worker so they can optimize their work, they can maximize uptime, they can reduce the total cost of ownership, and focus on efficiency, safety, and productivity. So as kind of a final thought, I wanted to just remind everybody that we're on a journey. Where we are today is going to be very different from where we are tomorrow. We know we're on a march towards autonomous vehicles sometime out in the future, and along that path we're going to be able to enable a bunch of different value and capabilities. So kind of today for the connected vehicle and the OEM, the table stakes really are diagnostic information, case management, warranty management, maximizing uptime, helping manage the fleet. That's kind of table stakes today. Where we are right now and where we're investing a lot of time and energy is in mobile resource management, connecting the driver and giving them a full experience, helping them lead an optimized day, and supporting things like smart cities, driver assistance, vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to vehicle. Over-the-air updates are very real, and becoming more something that the different OEM manufacturers are demanding. And then ultimately where we're going to get to is things like capacity sharing, load sharing, and I've got a term there, trucking as a service, or truck as a service. And I think the progressive OEM manufacturers of vehicles are realizing that people buy their trucks to make money with them, or to perform work on their network if they're a utility, etc. And they expect to be able to consume that vehicle, that truck, really as a service and maximize its value. So from the ecosystem perspective, the OEM, the dealer, the telematics service provider, we've all got to figure out how we can add value to the ecosystem, how we can add value to that truck, and how we can extend that value outside of not only the truck, but outside to the work that's being done. So with that, I'd like to, and this way, let me just end. The one thing that hasn't changed is kind of these timeless goals. We always want to, our customers always want to keep the trucks as full as possible. They always want to have them up and available as much as possible, and they always want to be as productive as possible. So all of these investments we're making along the way, either the OEMs or the telematics service providers, such as ourselves, we always got to focus on this, which is these goals, which is maximizing revenue, productivity, efficiency, safety, etc. So with that, I'll pass it over to Jack.
Okay, Kelly, thank you very much for those insights there. That's all the presentations wrapped up. I think it's good to obviously at the center of this industry are those timeless goals, whether it's a truck driving itself or a fully autonomous truck. So we've had some questions from the audience. I did promise that we would get time to read those out. First question, and I think this was semi-answered by Wes in his presentation, but Andrea Frasinski asks, what are the expectations for the volume of data for future fleet management features? I mean, how much data are these trucks going to generate? So we've already had an idea of, say, one of the most advanced trucks on the road today would be generating in proportions of 250 megabytes per day, and that's at 40% capacity. Maybe if I could throw it back to our OEM on the panel and the capabilities that are going to be embedded, Drew. What kind of region of data are we going to be talking about? How big is it going to get?
I think it's going to continue to grow. I'm not going to give an exact number, but just as a reference, from a ADAS sensor standpoint, by I think 2020, there's going to be 4.5 billion data collection sensors in vehicles globally. So you just think of all those sensors, and you think V2X, V2V, that data. That's a lot of just nodes on the whole Internet of Things, and so data is just going to continue to grow in that area. And then just by the sense of what's emerging now with the migration of fleet management services being installed at the OEM level, there's going to be just more and more gateways. And then when we talk over-the-air updates as far as engines and things of that nature, the amount of data is just going to continue to grow. So I don't have an exact figure, but just from the sensor fusion, as I also like to say data fusion standpoint, that's going to continue to grow.
Okay, Drew. So from your perspective, Wes, these functionalities on these trucks and the access that you will have to this data is only going to be a good thing, correct?
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be a good thing. The more data you have, the better, you're able to make better decisions more accurately. And as you start looking in it, I think Kelly even talked about the prognostics and diagnostics. The more data you have with history behind it, then you're able to start to extrapolate out about things that are going to happen in the future. And to Drew's point, I think our challenge as the community serving the fleet, we're going to have to make sure that we don't flood them with useless data. There's a lot of data that is necessary to the operation of a vehicle that is inconsequential to the efficiency and the operation. So part of what we have to do as a TSPs is make sure that we're providing the relevant data at the right time and enough, but not too much.
Okay, Wes. Thanks for those thoughts. Kelly, we'll come to you in a minute with some questions, but I'm just conscious that we should let the audience participate in this. We will be asking more questions to the panel in just a moment, but we're going to run a quick poll now just to kind of catch maybe the zeitgeist or the feelings from across the ecosystem. So if you just bear with me, we're going to be able to put up an interactive poll right about now. Okay, so who has the most to gain from the trend towards inbuilt connectivity? I mean, we saw earlier in Drew's presentation that where this industry has come from and where it's headed. So who's got the most to gain from your perspective? I'm going to give you maybe another 5 to 6 seconds, and then we'll throw it open to the panel just to debate and see what they think. Okay, so we've had 60% of our audience vote. Don't be shy. We'll close it in. I think it's closed. Okay, so the fleet manager. I mean, that's probably to be expected, but we've got the OEM taking nearly a quarter of the votes there. Maybe Kelly, if I come to you, is that a surprise to you, or maybe you could talk to the benefits for maybe the fleet manager first off?
Yeah, I think that everybody polling there hit the nail on the head. I think we've all got value to gain from built-in connectivity. So obviously nobody got 0% here, because I think there is value for everybody. But the fleet manager themselves, I sometimes talk about how we're in an era where the fleet manager actually needs to and is elevating their strategic kind of worth within the organization. So sometimes I kind of joke that the fleet manager really should be called the CMO, the Chief Mobile Officer, responsible for everything outside the 4 walls. And that kind of elevates the strategic nature of what their responsibility is. It's not just like in the past, the fleet manager was responsible to procure the vehicle, kind of manage them, maintain them, and dispose of them at end of life. But that fleet manager's role really has now elevated to be something much more strategic, because the dollars are actually earned outside the 4 walls, and that vehicle is a tool, a very important tool, to be able to generate that revenue, maximize the customer experience, and he has to have a responsibility to keep that driver safe and keep the motoring public safe while they do it. Also has a responsibility for managing and maintaining the carbon footprint and hopefully lowering it. So I think the fleet manager's role is going to become more valuable, more strategic within the organization, and we should maybe start to talk about fleet managers really as the chief mobile officers within the organization.
Okay, Kelly. Yeah, I think that's a very good consideration. They've got a lot more to do now than just the traditional role, shall we say? So you were talking about the value of the data having value across the ecosystem. So maybe it'd be good to get Drew's perspective on this. And I've got an idea for why the OEM would be interested in these data insights. But obviously, it's a core business for the TSP and the fleet manager. Maybe you could talk about the OEM's benefit moving forward of these vehicles becoming smarter and smarter.
Sure, Jack, thank you. I think the benefit that we're all trying to gain here is provide a reliable vehicle to the end customer, the fleet manager, and how he manages it. So from an OEM perspective, we want to continue to make our vehicles, that asset, as has been mentioned, in the customer's business, to be reliable. And part of that reliability is continuing to look at the data that we have access to. And some of that data is dynamic, and we need to be able to react to that data in a timely fashion. That's why over-the-air updates is important as more and more software is loaded on the vehicle, more ECUs. So yes, the OEM is very interested in this data. A lot of the times, some of the data looks very valuable to the fleet manager, but in parallel, that same data can be used by the OEM to make the truck asset more reliable, more efficient from a fuel economy standpoint, which again gets to the bottom line of the total cost of ownership. Uptime and fuel economy are some of the top 2, And as we build our new vehicles, continue to evolve them, we need that data to, if you will, validate and modify our designs going forward.
Okay, Drew, thank you for that. Whilst we've been having the polls on the screen, we've had a flurry of questions, and I think it's only fair that I start with the people who've been asking right from the start. So we've had a few similar ones, so I'm going to try and combine some here. So Butch Winters and, in fact, Kent McMullen both ask, can we talk about as a panel what's being done to harden or protect the security of the vehicle? So, for example, trying to prevent something that's happened in the consumer space with the Jeep hack. We've been talking about the Jeep 1939. That was predominantly Butch's concern through that kind of access point. Maybe it would be good to come back to you, Drew, on that side and see what our fleet service providers think about that also.
Yes, obviously cybersecurity is on everybody's mind. It's certainly on the minds of the OEMs, and having a gateway to the vehicle is a catch-22, if you will. Part of it is an open node now, not an open node, but another access point that could be compromised. But on the flip side, you know, the 5-star automotive cybersecurity, one of the steps is being able to update over the air. So the fact that we have it installed moving forward and over-the-air updates are coming at the countermeasure. And what we need to do is, part of that infrastructure also is that gateway should not be resident, if you will, directly on a key component such as an engine. So you need, from an architecture standpoint, a firewall. And part of that firewall is that gateway. So we need, as an OEM, to make sure that that firewall, that gateway is robust and is only allowing traffic that's, if you will, validated. And then from the over-the-air update, that's a countermeasure for cybersecurity. So yes, we are concerned with it, and we are taking steps, and the architecture of the truck is evolving to, one, unlock all these features, but at the same time making sure that it's robust and flexible enough to provide updates over the air in the future to counteract any potential items of concern from a cybersecurity perspective.
Okay, Drew. I think we've had a very interesting question come in, which I'd like to direct to our TSP. So it's from Justin Hamilton, and he talks about the trend of OEMs developing their own telematics platforms. And he says, with the exception of Fleetboard, we're not quite seeing this amongst the trucking space. So the real question is, do maybe our TSPs see an OEM becoming their own TSP? Maybe we could go to Kelly for this, because I don't think we've come to you for a while.
Yeah, I mean, certainly any OEM would have the capability to set themselves up as a TSP. You know, the technologies are available. They would have the capability and the engineering strength to be able to do it. But I think it would be, I think most progressive OEM manufacturers realize and understand that there are very few homogeneous fleets out there. You know, there's not fleets of just one brand of vehicle. Very often, for different styles of work and different functions of work, you require different vehicles. You need light-duty vehicles, medium-duty vehicles, heavy-duty vehicles, and sometimes different flavors of heavy-duty vehicles. So it would be somewhat risky if an OEM wanted to be the TSP, because they would have to, you know, their value proposition would be that they would just find customers that only use their brand of truck. And we saw something similar in the off-road equipment industry about 10 years ago, about 7 years ago. They started to put satellite modems onto the big yellow iron equipment. And so Caterpillar had their solution, and Komatsu had their solution, and John Deere had their solution. And at the end of the day, customers became very frustrated because when they had a mixed fleet, they had to log into the CAT system, they had to log into the John Deere system, they had to log into the Komatsu system, and they had no way to kind of consolidate and aggregate this information together so they could make informed decisions about, across the fleet. So I think similarly, there would be a risk that the OEMs would have that they would end up building a silo TSP for their own brand, and that wouldn't deliver the ultimate value to the end customer. So what we do with the progressive OEMs that we work with is we try and help them create distinct value for their brand, their truck, and help them create not only just a great telematics solution, but also a great marketing solution to bring the dealers into play, the salespeople into play, to add as much value to the overall ecosystem as possible and give that end customer the maximum value that they can get while still allowing the OEM to differentiate their offering with the end customer.
Okay, Kelly. Yeah, those are good considerations. Wes, from a TSP perspective, from the OmniTrack side, what would you think about this also?
So from a standpoint of the OEMs, most of them are already engaging in some level of data analytics for their own vehicles, and they're obviously providing that out information where appropriate to their fleet customers. I think Kelly really hit on the key point that when you have a mixed fleet, the frustration among the fleet owners about having to log into multiple sites to retrieve data or to manage the data or to even look at the data would probably be a bit formidable, and in fact would be counterproductive to the fleet looking to purchase a new vehicle. It's possible, but it would require a level of cooperation that I don't think has happened in the industry before. It seems to me that the TSPs fit the perfect intermediary solution and are able to be that in-between person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a good little niche that TSPs have carved out. So we're going to finish with a final poll, and it actually relates to some questions that we've had. We've had one from Praveen Ingel, and he asks, what's the plan for the monetization of these services? So that actually leads us into our final poll, which we're going to bring up on your screens now. So as the amount of data that we've talked about continues to increase, who's going to pay for it? Who's going to have this appetite to pay for these insights? Is it going to be the OEM? Is it going to be the TSP, the fleet manager? Maybe not the driver, or is it going to be somebody that's going to come in as a third party, perhaps a data analytics provider? So we're going to give you another 5 to 6 seconds, and then we'll close the poll. Okay, so we've closed the poll now. If you just bear with me. Okay, so we've got a clear winner, the fleet manager. I mean, that's probably to be expected. Those people are going to be the ones getting the benefits out of this. So maybe if we go to Drew, because we've not spoken to you in a while. Drew, any surprises there? I mean, some people have actually said the OEM should be paying for this. What do you think on that?
Well, ultimately, a lot of the data is used for fleet management services, and again, that is the fleet manager has the most to gain from that. It kind of mirrors exactly who has the most to gain, is the fleet manager or the customer. So I'm not surprised by that. I think the OEM models that are out there, there's some standard subscriptions for a time, and then the customer's asked to pay for it. So the OEM certainly can use some of that data, but the primary use is, again, all back to the end customer to keep his vehicle from uptime, most efficient. And so I think the expectation is the customer, I'm going to say, maybe over the fleet manager, is ultimately the one that's most benefit from and would then be expected to pay for most of it. However, in parallel, I think the TSPs, OEMs are all going to leverage some of that data that is being used for multiple sources, multiple applications.
Okay. So Wes, I mean, the OEM, the TSP, you guys are already convinced of the value of this. How are you convincing your customers of greater and greater data and services?
So when we go in and take a look at what we can provide, we're able to show significant improvements in routing efficiencies and time efficiencies. Kelly had a chart up from I think it was Frost and Sullivan that actually broke it out quite well. That is becoming very accepted by the fleet managers. So the actual sale has gotten to the point where it's just being able to demonstrate that we have the ability to provide that data. I do see the interesting thing here on the third party, the data analytics provider is certainly going to be willing and able to pay for some of the data shown here. But in the end, that's going to go back to the fleet manager who will be buying that data from the third party. So I really, I think the fleet manager sees the value. They know the value. It's going to be just a bit of time before it gets to be more of a habit of requesting the data or having the data available rather than going out and searching for it. And that may be our challenge, making it available to the fleet manager, like we talked about, without that person having to go out and search and dig for the data that they're looking for.
Okay, Wes. And Kelly, maybe a final word from you before we wrap the webinar up on this topic.
Sure. I think the poll is not surprising at all. I think obviously the person who's going to pay for it is the person who's going to get the most benefit. But what the poll also demonstrates is the fact that we've got to be able to, as TSPs and as OEMs, use the data that we're gathering and the technology that we have at our hands to drive as much end customer value as possible. So that fleet manager is the end customer, and if he can drive value, i.e. keep his trucks full, keep them up as much as possible, be as productive and safe and efficient as possible, then he's going to pay more money for the services that allow him to do all of that stuff. Everything has a return on investment for it. If I'm asking for $1 to support some technology that I'm providing, I better be able to give back 3 or 5 times that very quickly in the short term, so that fleet manager can justify it. As I said earlier, that fleet manager, the role is becoming more strategic within the kind of modern mobile enterprise. And we've got to help them position themselves strategically and show them how it's not just about cost reduction, it's not just about safety, it's really about impacting the top line revenue, impacting customer service, and really impacting also the driver experience so that we can recruit and retain drivers a lot better. So we all have an opportunity as the OEM, as the TSP, as the fleet manager to increase our value, and I think that the poll here demonstrates that who's going to probably pay for that.
Okay, thank you very much, Kelly, for those final thoughts. So thank you very much for tuning into today's TU-Automotive webinar. As I said, we'll be sending the video recording to your inbox by the start of next week. In the meantime, if these issues that we've been discussing are important to your business, then do take a look at the Connected Fleets USA 2016 conference website, which this webinar has been produced in association with. The URL, if you want to check it out, is tu-auto.com/fleet. We have some fantastic speakers confirmed to take part. You can see them on screen now. We'll be discussing the IoT, which no one can get away from at the moment, and fleet's position within that. We'll be looking at different ADAS features and the road to autonomy and what that means for fleet management. We'll also be talking about the ELD mandate, investment opportunities, and the climate for that at the moment, and also how the industry transitions from a product to a service-led operation. But for now, thank you very much for listening in. A huge thank you to our speakers who have taken a lot of time and effort in preparing those presentations. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, please do email me at jack.palmer@penton.com. Until then, well, until the next time, thank you very much, and please do join us again. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you, Emily. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.